Okay, we're Gaming Lariat. My name's Jonathan Ridgway, and we're here today interviewing another game developer, Adam Bishop of Pykrete Games. He's recently released the company's first game actually, a Championship Wrestling Promoter, which came out on November 9th on Steam. So Adam, how are you doing? Thank you for being here.
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm still going, just about, bearing up under the pressure. Adam is in Canada at the moment, so I think he's in the morning and I'm in the sort of late afternoon time, so it's an international interview, if you want to call it that. Your game came out, last week at the time of this interview. How long was development? How long did it take?
So from the kind of the earliest prototypes to release, it was a little under 3 years.
Wow, 3 years for your first game. Bit of a challenge, was it? Or...
Yeah, so I mean, I've done like smaller prototypes and stuff before. A few of them are up on our website actually, and then there's a bunch of unreleased ones. So, spent a number of years kind of making smaller stuff, a lot of which just never got released, and then kind of jumped into this big project a few years ago.
So, what was your kind of background then? Where did you study game development at university, or did you kind of move into this as a passion thing initially with your, as you said, like the unreleased games and the smaller projects?
So I actually studied history, international relations at university, and just kind of started picking this stuff up as a hobby. And I actually work in software development now, so kind of an unusual transition, but that's how it goes sometimes.
Have you found your degree had transferable things in relation to making this game specifically, or?
Not too much for this game, no. Some of the other stuff I've worked on in the past a little bit, but I don't. International relations doesn't come up too much in wrestling.
Shocker. Oh well, I don't know actually. I don't know with some of WWE's bookings nowadays. You're never sure, but
I suppose so.
So you when did you found Pykrete Games? Was it founded specifically for this game, or was it the name that you released some of those smaller projects under as well?
Yeah, it was more or less for this game. The kind of company name goes back a little bit before the Championship Wrestling Promoter. Just I used it to put out like I said, some of my prototypes and stuff. But this is kind of it was mostly for Championship Wrestling Promoters, kind of the first big project.
And with Championship Wrestling Promoter, I mean, it's kind of a match made in heaven for our website because we cover professional wrestling and we cover video games. So it was like, okay, a video game that's professional wrestling in some form, fantastic. What was your... Are you, I'm assuming, I've got to assume anyway, that you're a big fan of wrestling, which is why you decided to make this kind of game?
Yeah, for sure. I've been watching wrestling for, I don't know, about 35 years or so, like back since the 80s. So, yeah, I've definitely, I've got a kind of appreciation for kind of a lot of periods of wrestling history, and kind of the game is, based more on kind of a modern style of wrestling, but I have kind of love for different eras of wrestling. And I think, the idea with the kind of TV ratings war being the center of the game, that goes back to kind of the Monday Night Wars of the 1990s. I mean, that was definitely a big influence on me, and just in terms of like kind of what the game should feel like to play.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, I think what was, like you said about the 80s in Canada, like the UK was a little different as well to Canada. What was the kind of stuff? Was it WWF? WCW at that time, or?
Yeah, so we had WWF. We got some WCW and NWA too, but WWF was the one that kind of like, when I was a kid, I think it aired Saturdays at noon. They aired their kind of main TV show. So like every Saturday at noon, I was, sat in front of the TV, watching WWE Main Event or whatever it was called.
Yeah, because it's always interesting seeing the like even before that, like the cultural differences in the countries. Because Canada, I believe you had like Stampede Wrestling, was it? It was the Hart family. Is that correct?
So that was out west. So we didn't really get that in the east.
Okay.
Like I'm kind of aware of it, but it never like broadcast on our TV or anything.
Okay, yeah, because we're based in the UK. Like before WWF was as big as what it was, we had World of Sport, which was like British style wrestling, So it's interesting to see the different cultures before WWE became the juggernaut that it is, the kind of mammoth,
Yeah,
the monopoly.
yeah, for sure.
So when you were designing this game, you spoke about it being kind of it's it focuses on TV wrestling, the ratings war. What was your inspiration for deciding to design it around that specifically, and not more kind of broader? Like a business, like kind of live events and things like that. You wanted to focus on the ratings war. Was it the GM mode from SmackDown versus Raw, or was there something else that inspired that?
I definitely like those kind of modes in old games. I actually had been playing a lot of Fire Pro Wrestling has a promoter mode that I'd been playing a lot of
Mm.
um, shortly before starting on this. Um, but so one thing I kind of wanted to do is, there are games like Total Extreme Wrestling and that kind of thing that are kind of these really deep simulations. Um, and so I thought it'd be kind of interesting to try and tackle it from a slightly more strategy game standpoint,
Mm.
where rather than having kind of an open-ended simulation, you have like a more like a set of resources and goals that you're trying to balance. So to give the game a bit more structure, so that if the game says, the goal of the game is to win the TV ratings war, the goal of the game is to, earn money. Um, I feel like as a player, maybe that's a little bit easier to jump into. You kind of know what you're trying to do when you start the game, rather than kind of having this giant sandbox, which is, awesome once you put all the time in, but is a little bit difficult to kind of just get your feet wet when you don't really know the game very well. So I thought it would kind of be a good way to give players more direction in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely noticed that when I was playing the game as well. And I think back to with TW, I had a phase, and it was in high school, probably about 2 to 3 years, where I just deep dived into that like crazy. And I guess that period of my life was a bit of a blur with TW. But I can definitely see your attempt to make this game more accessible, which I think as an indie game is quite important. So was the like I noticed the visuals in the game. Were the visuals also an attempt to say like when you're thinking about accessibility, was making the visuals the way that they were, was that the idea behind it as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely thought of that as a bit of a differentiating factor, is that as far as I know, it's possible I have there's something out there that I haven't seen, but any other kind of wrestling sims out there are like 100% text based.
Mm-hmm.
And this for sure is mostly text based, but I kind of just liked the idea of kind of it being a little bit more visual. I mean, obviously there's no animations. You don't see like full matches play out. But I just thought the idea of having that kind of, you know, I just felt like it would kind of bring you more into it a bit if you could kind of, see an arena and a ring and the wrestlers in it. It kind of brings it to life a bit. Just livens it up a bit beyond the, just the text windows.
Yeah, and being able to, I mean, look, it's almost a form of role playing, or just immersing yourself in that world, because allowing people to customize the ring, the color of the ring, it might not have I say this as a game designer myself, like it might not have a tangible influence in the mechanics or the attributes or the equations that go into the results, but it immerses the person who's playing the role of a promoter in the world itself. So I think there's great value in that, and that's why you allowed as well all the customization of the belts, not just in the namings but also the designs.
Yeah, I mean, so, we're a pretty small company. We don't have like a huge budget, but I just kind of wanted to provide people a way to make it feel sort of like the game was their own. Like, as you've seen, there is a limited set of belt designs and colors and stuff. But I just feel like in any game, people always love customization. People always love character editors. Um, and so I feel like you can kind of feel like it's more your own promotion if you can, do a bit of design beyond what kind of the default are. I just feel like, people really enjoy generally having the ability to customize that kind of thing.
Really cool, really cool. So who worked on the design of the game? Was it yourself, or was there a sort of a team effort on it, or?
Yeah, so the company, the only person permanently with the company right now is me, and then everyone else who's contributed has been freelancers. So there was a freelance artist, Ryan Dean, who did an amazing job with all the art in the game, and is a huge part of well, I mean, is the only reason the game looks as good as it does. And super appreciate all the work that he put in. Um, but in terms of day to day, the company is actually just one person.
Hmm. Okay, and so did you? So you spent all the time creating all the. I'm pretty sure it randomly. It's not procedurally generated. It's randomly selected. So you've wrote, for example, all the nicknames like Gladiator and whatever, and then it randomly selects when it's creating the characters, the NPCs, or
Yeah,
whatever.
so the game just has a bunch of like a library of gimmicks that it can assign to
Hmm.
wrestlers when they're generated. Um, and so it's actually the way it works too is it's weighted more towards like the higher a wrestler's rating is, the more likely they are to be given a gimmick.
Okay.
Which is, I think, kind of how it works in wrestling. Your lower card people, your jobbers tend to not have a super defined gimmick, and then your big stars, you know, they have their t-shirts and their theme songs and, their intro with the fireworks and stuff, and they get a little more character.
Is there something similar done with the because there's so many? For people who don't know, I highly recommend you check out the game. There's you choose the continent that you play on, and you
Correct.
also you get given a roster of people in the different nationalities, ethnicities, uh, obviously varying talent and everything else. Is there something that links those as well? Like, for example, like the names with the nationalities and the continent that
No,
they're on.
so the random character generation is pretty wide open.
Hmm.
Um, there are rules in terms of, character ratings and stuff like that. Um, but like the names aren't region locked or anything like that.
So, how long did it take you to kind of design the algorithm or the attributes that decide what the audience score is? Was that did you have a vision in your head what that would already be like? What was it like? Face versus heel, popularity, fitness, all that kind of stuff, or was that something that you kind of gradually um, tested over time and thought maybe I need to change this, maybe I need to add that attribute in to get a bit more realism?
Yeah, so the base set of attributes was has been pretty much unchanged since a few months into development, I would say.
Mm.
So there's the three, four, five, six. So there's the kind of eight main sort of things wrestlers are measured on, and their scores out of 15, and those determine basically the likelihood of getting good audience ratings in the matches. So those were actually set pretty early on, and that 1 to 15 point scale has been there pretty much since the beginning. Um, and the match simulation engine was actually just about the first thing that was written for the game. Way before there were graphics or way before there was even like menus or anything. There was just kind of a simulation engine. Um, and spent a lot of time trying to make that fun and interesting before there even was a rest of the game. Um,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's undergone tons of revisions over time to make it better, to improve the simulation. I will say actually originally you can probably find some screenshots buried in our Twitter feed somewhere, but originally it was all text based. There was no graphics, and actually it was all big like blocks of text, big paragraphs that kind of tried to like describe a match. Um, but I found that one, it just took a really long time to write those and randomize them, and two, it felt like no one was actually going to read them. You would probably read like one or two matches and you would decide, well, if I'm going to be running 60 shows a year, I'm not going to read, you know, 300 words for every match. No one's going to do that. Um, and that was why I kind of switched it to the current format where it kind of just describes like a play-by-play of the moves rather than like, a full text description of a match.
Yeah, the as someone I'm British, and I'm a big fan of football, and I've
Hmm.
played like Football Manager in its earlier iterations called Championship Manager, which were
Hmm.
like 90s, 2000s, and they did a similar thing that in what you've got now, where it's kind of just a line of text that describes literally what happens. It's not in depth or anything, not in depth, but you know what I mean. It's not as detailed as what you spoke about before with the 300 words, etc. It's kind of just noting. It's almost like a commentary, right? Like a commentator saying something,
Hmm.
um, and it works really well. And when I was playing your game, it reminded me of the old Football Manager games prior to the really expensive 3D match engine that they've got now.
Yeah, so
Um,
I would say actually, to be honest, I think even games like Football Manager or like Out of the Park Baseball, which is kind of the baseball version of
mhm.
that style of game, those were a pretty big influence on me in terms of trying to develop this to be slightly more strategy oriented rather than simulation oriented. I mean, I know those games obviously have big simulations, but the idea that they're kind of, um, like in Football Manager, obviously you're trying to win, the league championship or move up, earn a promotion to a higher league if you start as a lower, a team in a lower league or whatever. Um, and kind of having, I'm missing the word I'm looking for, but basically the idea that you have a kind of set structure in terms of trying to make money, trying to win. Um, you know, the ratings war was actually kind of inspired by those types of games. Um, Pushing the game to a bit of a more strategy side rather than simulation.
Yeah, and I think when you make something that's so rigidly almost simulation, it's for a very specific audience. Like there's a really fine-tuned, which can be good sometimes, but like it's a very fine-tuned audience. Whereas I think stuff like, as you spoke about your inspiration Football Manager there, I mean, our programmer at our company, he doesn't touch football with a barge pole, but he
Hmm.
plays Football Manager and he plays Crusader Kings and he plays these, and he could tell you random footballers' names because he's played them on Football Manager, but he hasn't watched a game of football and he won't be seen dead in a stadium. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
you
that's
know,
that's
so
the same for me actually, as I don't actually watch any football, but I play a bunch of football video games just because uh, like I find them fun to play. So yeah, I know all these soccer players and stuff exactly like you were saying for him, like it's just from encountering them in the game and playing the transfer market and stuff like that. Even though you know I probably couldn't identify them if I was watching like an actual game.
yeah, yeah. And just to journey back when I drew a blank earlier. What I was going to ask you is about like the kind of world that it's set in, because you spoke
Hmm.
about the TV ratings and what it's inspired from. It's not based on a world of today. It's based on a sort of fictional world where the continents there's a bit more what's the word, equality, I guess, in terms of
Yeah,
where the revenue is and the promotions themselves.
yeah, and that was really just like you know uh, people from different continents buy the game, and I think people generally like to, like you were saying early on, you kind of typically want to kind of imagine that it's in your world, that it's
Mhm.
like, I'm from Canada, and so I can kind of set a promotion here, and you're from the UK, and so you can kind of set a promotion there. Um, and so since it doesn't really affect the gameplay, it's just a flavor thing. I just kind of liked it as a way to, uh, you know, let people kind of feel like they were controlling their local scene, really.
Yeah, and I think if you make it, I mean, obviously, if you make it too realistic, where can you have a promotion? The US, pretty much,
Yeah.
especially if it's TV.
Or Japan, maybe Mexico.
Yeah, but if it's TV wrestling, if you look at the revenue
Yeah.
comparisons, like
Yeah, yeah.
you need a major station in America if you want to make the big dough. Even if you're doing like Mexican promotions, 10,000 plus. Japan promotions can do 10,000 plus attendance, but the
Yeah, yeah.
revenue is dwarfed by WWE and now AEW just because of those lucrative TV deals, right?
Yeah.
So I think making it the way that you've made it in this kind of fictional world where there's TV revenue money to be made anywhere, which is nice,
Hmm.
which we
Yeah, yeah.
probably wish
If
it
only.
was. Yeah, if only. I think it's worked out quite well, and it's created a good balance. And as you said, people from different parts of the world, they can then play their promotion from their continent, and they probably feel a bit more represented in the game. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's definitely the idea.
So I guess we'll come into a close, but I'd really like to ask you. So the game's out now. What are your plans with the current game, and what are your plans moving forward, either with this game or something else?
Yeah, so everything right now is just focused on getting out as many bug fixes as possible. We've already put out two bug fix patches in the past few days since the game has come out. So pretty much everything people are reporting, I'm fixing it as quickly as possible. So everything's kind of focused on that right now. Just make sure, anyone who's playing it is encountering as few bugs as possible. A little bit of balancing work. And then sometime next month, so December, there will be a slightly bigger update that's going to include not like a total overhaul, but it'll include some new things that people have requested. A couple things that I'd kind of hoped to get in that weren't quite ready when the game launched. So there's definitely, going to be that fairly big update coming out, 4 to 6 weeks from now. Um, and then, we will definitely at some point in the not too distant future start work on a new game, but I don't think right now it's you know, nothing firm is decided right now. Everything's kind of focused on doing bug fixes and then trying to get a few more things into the game that people are looking for.
Was the launch relatively? I know you spoke about bug fixes, but they can often be really minor. Was it a relatively plain sailing in terms of launch? Were you okay and everything?
Yeah, I mean, definitely anytime you launch a game, you're always worried that there's something huge that you missed that, as soon as people load it up, they'll discover that like save files are corrupted or something that you missed. So definitely nothing like that.
Yeah.
That's obviously a huge relief. Um, I mean, in any game there's bugs, so we've definitely had stuff to fix, and you know, uh, there's been patches going out to fix them, and I'm sure there's more bugs that I haven't fixed yet that I'll fix as soon as I know about them. But yeah, it was definitely a big relief that, on launch day nothing major happened. It was mostly kind of display issues and some issues in the simulation and stuff like that.
That's good to hear. Yeah. And are you encouraging the community to speak to you, share their thoughts, share their, but even like suggestions and things like that? You spoke about doing an update that's introducing some things that people have spoken about. So you like to listen to the community a lot? Is that
Yeah,
something
so
you're
there's
very
a
proud of?
Discord. There's a Discord for the game. I've been taking a lot of feedback from there. I read pretty much everything that goes up on the Steam forums. So those are the two major places that people have been giving feedback so far. Um, but I mean, it's for sure it's not possible to put everything everyone wants in the game because, everyone wants kind of different stuff. But
Hmm.
you know, any kind of feedback that goes up in any forum, I'm kind of listening to it, taking note of it, and kind of prioritizing stuff based on, like if several people want a thing, then that's kind of more likely to go in than if just one person, says it would be useful, and then just kind of prioritizing based on development time.
Yeah. And just lastly, then it's available on. Is it just Steam? It's available on.
It's just on Steam now. Before the end of the year, it will be available on itch.io as well. Just kind of wanted to get the Steam launch ironed out before doing that so that we don't have to kind of push bug fixes two places at once. But once the game is fairly stable and the bug fixes aren't going out as often, it'll be up on itch.io as well.
Yeah, because the beauty of Steam as developers is you can release an update on Steam and it automatically goes to someone's library saying, hey, you need to download this update, or if someone's got it set, it'll automatically download the update. Whereas itch.io, you have to manually install the build again and overwrite the files. So as a developer, Steam is a bit of a godsend like that, at least in my experience. I think maybe itch.io has a client nowadays. Is that right? Maybe that does that?
If
I'm
it
not.
does, I'm not really sure how that works. My understanding is what you said that on itch.io that if you install a build, you kind of just get you download an installer, right?
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah, just
DRM
kind of
free, isn't it? So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
You just get usually a zip file or something, and you just kind of can do what you put it wherever you want.
Yeah,
So
and
that's definitely going to be going up. Just wanted to make sure
yeah, so that's
because like you say, it's
championship.
harder to push out patches.
Yeah, it's so this is Championship Wrestling Promoter. And what was the price point? 'Cause in the UK, it's £15.49. What is it where you're based? Just so people are aware.
Yeah, so in Canadian and US dollars, it's 19.99. And then we kind of use Steam's auto conversion feature for other currencies.
Yeah, so hopefully it's an appropriate price wherever you are in the world. Fingers
Indeed.
crossed. If not, blame Valve, not us. So. Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much, Adam. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. I wish you nothing but the best with Championship Wrestling Promoter moving forward and whatever you work on next. It's been a pleasure, mate. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, and definitely good luck on your game as well.
Thank you.